Well, in the Middle East, Israel's military says it recovered the bodies of 6 hostages during an overnight operation in southern Gaza. It comes as negotiations for a ceasefire deal resume today.
Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accepted what's known as a bridging proposal in a meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken yesterday. Now the U.S. is urging Hamas to do the same.
NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez is live in Tel Aviv with the latest for us. Raf, good morning. What do we know about Israel's overnight operation and the recovery of those bodies? Let's start there.
Savannah, Joe, good morning. Israel's military says it was operating on precise intelligence, that it carried out a raid in the city of Khan Younis in southern Gaza overnight, and it came back with the bodies of these 6 male hostages. Now, we already knew that most of these hostages were dead already, either killed on October 7th or had died in the months since. But among them was 79-year-old Avraham Munder. He was a grandfather who was kidnapped along with his wife, his daughter, and his 8-year-old grandson, Ohad, on October 7th. Ohad and the 2 women came out of Gaza in that first ceasefire deal back in November, and we have spoken to the family many, many times over the last 10 months. They campaigned absolutely tirelessly, hoping to bring their grandfather home safely, but it was not to be. They now have his body, and we expect that they will lay him to rest in the coming days. Guys.
Raf, let's talk about the ceasefire negotiations. Hamas has said it's not going to attend those negotiations today. How is that going to impact the timing of a potential agreement, and what would happen if an agreement's not reached?
So, Joe, as you know, the format of these talks has never been Israel and Hamas sitting at the table across from each other. So the fact that Hamas is not physically showing up in Cairo is not in and of itself a deal breaker. But Hamas is making very negative signs right now about this American proposal. Israel has accepted that proposal, according to Secretary Blinken, but Hamas says it makes too many concessions to Israel. For example, Hamas is saying it allows Israeli forces to remain on the Gaza-Egypt border. So at this point, Secretary of State Blinken continuing to crisscross the Middle East. He says he is determined to get this deal done, but it looks right now like he only has buy-in from one side. So it is really not clear right now what the path forward is. In terms of what happens if there isn't a deal, the fighting continues, the hostages remain in captivity, but also Iran appears to have been holding off on its threat to strike Israel in retaliation for the assassination of that senior Hamas commander in Tehran. If these ceasefire talks break down, then there really isn't any reason for Iran and its Hezbollah allies to hold off. Guys.
Raf, of course, a major concern here has been just the sheer number of civilians in Gaza who have died, who have been impacted by this. We also now know that more than 200 humanitarian workers specifically have been killed in Gaza. That is according to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. They also note that is the highest number of UN aid workers that have died in any conflict or any natural disaster since the UN began operations. How's Israel responding to claims it's not doing enough to protect civilians?
Yeah, it's just an extremely grim toll, Savannah. The message from Israel has been pretty consistent since the beginning of the war. They say they are fighting an extremely complex conflict against an enemy who deliberately hides among the civilian population inside of the Gaza Strip. They say that they take measures to reduce civilian casualties, for example, creating this humanitarian zone on the coast. They say they try to use smaller munitions when they can. But what we are hearing over and over and over again from the United Nations, from other humanitarian organizations, is that simply Israel is not doing enough to keep civilians safe. And you are hearing that not just from the aid community, but from President Biden, from Vice President Kamala Harris, who say that while they support Israel's right to defend itself, the Israeli military and the government absolutely must do more to keep innocent Palestinians safe. Guys.
Raf, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.